Madison stopped me during rehearsal and bluntly told me I didn't match the vibe for the wedding and shouldn't come, and as I walked out with everyone watching, I didn't go to my car but instead called the caterer and cancelled everything because I'm Rebecca Hayes, 32, a successful accounting firm owner in Portland, and while I'm not flashy or rich-looking, I had full financial control over their dream wedding. Growing up, my younger brother Daniel was always the favorite while I was the dependable one fixing his mistakes, and when he got engaged to Madison 6 months ago, I offered to pay for the entire wedding as a gift, covering the venue, food, flowers, photos, deposits, vendor talks, and all planning details, hoping that supporting him would finally move me from the background into the family circle, but Madison never liked me and saw me as a problem because I didn't fit her perfect image. When she told me I didn't belong at the wedding I had paid for, something inside me broke and I realized I had been paying to be pushed aside by people who would rather erase me than include me. So tell me where you're watching from in the comments because I read them all. The betrayal happened at the rehearsal in the venue I personally booked and paid for when I arrived early on Friday to check final details, holding my planning folder and wearing a simple blue dress, admiring the riverside gardens I chose after visiting 12 venues, with string lights glowing in the trees and the altar glowing at sunset, when Madison showed up in full designer clothes with 5 bridesmaids who looked like models and snapped at me asking why I was there, and when I said I was there for the rehearsal to make sure everything was ready, she coldly told me I wasn't in the wedding party and didn't fit the vibe, while her bridesmaids laughed behind her, my face burning as I quietly reminded her I was Daniel's sister and expected to walk as family, just as she stepped closer and lowered her voice so only I could hear. She told me it would be better if I skipped the wedding because the day was about them, not about making people comfortable, and as I searched for Daniel to stand up for me, I saw him across the courtyard avoiding my eyes, while Madison coldly told me I didn't belong and ordered me to leave, a moment that stunned me because I was being pushed out of a wedding I had fully paid for, from the flowers and chairs to the lights and music, and as I stood shaking in the parking lot of the venue I had personally chosen and negotiated, gripping my keys and realizing every detail inside existed because of my money, my phone buzzed with a message from Daniel asking me not to make things harder, and that's when it became clear this wasn't just Madison but a planned move to erase me while keeping my support, and as my hurt turned into clarity, I decided they could have their day without me but they would not have it with my money, especially after calling the venue the next morning and learning Madison had already contacted them earlier that week. I learned Madison had tried to change the primary contact details so my name would be removed from all vendor messages, claiming there was family drama and she needed to protect the event, and it was clear she had painted herself as the calm bride dealing with a difficult sister-in-law while planning to cut me out but keep my money. So I drove to my parents' house expecting support only to be dismissed as my mother waved it off as stress and my father said Daniel needed this more than I did, urging me to skip the wedding to keep the peace. And when I reminded them I paid for everything they called it generous but warned me not to make a scene, making me feel unreasonable for wanting to attend my own brother's wedding, invisible while still being used. And later that day Madison called me in a fake sweet voice saying she hoped I understood that this was just how it had to be and asking where you're watching from in the comments because sometimes the people closest to us hurt us the most. I stayed quiet and let her talk as she thanked me for being such a generous sister while making it clear I still wasn't welcome, praising my financial help while stripping away my dignity, then casually suggesting I look at wedding photos later over dinner like some distant relative, and when I finally told her she was right and I wouldn't go where I wasn't wanted, she seemed relieved until she sensed a shift in my tone, because in that moment I understood they saw me as a bank account, not a person, and after the call I sat in my home office looking at the contracts and realized the truth they hadn't considered, that every single vendor agreement was signed only in my name, a choice I'd made to keep payments clear, meaning Madison's name wasn't legally attached to anything at all. She was listed only as the day of contact, but what they didn't realize was that my business background had taught me to protect myself, so every vendor contract I signed included clear cancellation clauses with 24 to 48 hours notice, covering the venue, food, flowers, photographer, and band, and I had also been quietly documenting Madison's behavior for weeks by saving texts, recording calls, and keeping detailed notes once my instincts told me something was wrong. Because I always keep records, and the wedding insurance policy was in my name as well, with Daniel never added as a co-signer, meaning they had mistaken my generosity for surrendering control when in reality I still had full legal authority over everything, right down to every plate, flower, and song. And that night I called my business partner and best friend Jake, who had seen this situation coming and bluntly told me they were using me, then showed up with food and his laptop, spread the contracts across my table, and confirmed after reviewing them that I had complete legal power to cancel the entire wedding. When I asked Jake if I really should cancel everything because it was still Daniel's wedding, he reminded me they couldn't take my money while treating me like I wasn't family, and as my phone filled with missed calls and desperate voicemails from Daniel begging me not to do anything drastic and panic messages from Madison suddenly calling it a misunderstanding, I ignored them all and even blocked my parents to avoid more pressure to stay quiet, choosing for once not to clean up everyone else's mess. And by Friday evening vendors began calling me directly, confused because Madison was trying to take control of plans she had no legal authority over, with the florist and then the caterer both confirming that every contract was still solely in my name. When vendors asked whether to take instructions from Madison or me, I calmly told them all decisions went through me because I held the contracts, and as panic spread, Daniel showed up at my office the night before the wedding looking exhausted and accused me of ruining his big day, but I told him I was simply refusing to pay for my own exclusion, then showed him Madison's messages clearly stating I didn't belong. And though he finally seemed to grasp the truth, it was too late, because Saturday morning my parents, Daniel, and Madison stormed my apartment demanding I fix everything as Madison screamed that vendors had cancelled, and I calmly confirmed I had cancelled all contracts at 6 a.m., which sent my father into a rage accusing me of being petty and vindictive. They called it Daniel's wedding day, but I corrected them calmly and said now it was just Saturday, and as Madison fell apart crying about the 150 guests coming, I reminded her she was the one who told me I didn't belong, so I wouldn't pay to be excluded, while Daniel claimed he never said I couldn't come, but I showed him his own message telling me not to make things harder, proving he stayed silent when it mattered. And when Madison suddenly offered to let me attend, I laughed and refused. After being told I didn't fit her vibe, as my parents begged me to think about the guests and the planning, I told them they should have thought about that before deciding I wasn't family, and when Madison collapsed saying they'd have nothing left, I looked at her and said calmly that she got exactly what she wanted, a wedding without me. Daniel looked at me, completely stunned, and said he couldn't believe I would do this to them, but I reminded him that I hadn't harmed anyone, I had simply stopped doing everything for them, and that difference mattered. The room went quiet except for Madison crying, and that was the moment they finally realized their actions had consequences. Daniel and Madison were forced to make embarrassing calls to cancel their wedding and inform 150 guests, then postpone it by 3 months and pay themselves for a much smaller ceremony at a local restaurant. My parents tried to stay neutral at first, but later apologized for taking sides against me, admitting they had chosen comfort over standing up for their daughter. Madison never said sorry, but she never left me out of family gatherings again, learning that mistreating me came with real consequences, while Daniel learned to speak up for himself instead of letting others fight for him. Our relationship didn't heal overnight, but it became stronger because it's now based on mutual respect. I used the money I had saved to take a peaceful solo trip to Italy, and everything worked out smoothly because most of the vendors refunded my deposits thanks to their cancellation terms. When Daniel got married 3 months later, it was a small, simple ceremony where I was treated with genuine respect as an honored guest, and although the celebration was smaller, it felt far more real. That experience taught me that love without respect turns into control, and that setting boundaries with family matters more than keeping everyone comfortable. For the first time, I stopped fixing other people's problems and focused on my own life. If you've ever been the family member who gives everything but is treated like nothing, this story is for you, because sometimes the strongest move you can make is stepping back from people who don't value you. Your voice matters, so tell me where you're watching from, drop it below, and subscribe for more real stories about betrayal, justice, and strength, because setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary.